Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Coach the Coach Radio. Brought to you by the Business RadioX Ambassador Program, the no-cost business development strategy for coaches who want to spend more time serving local business clients and less time selling them. Go to brxambassador.com to learn more. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Coach the Coach Radio, and this is going to be a good one. Today we have with us Stacy Berg Jackson with SBJ Consulting. Welcome, Stacy.
Well, hi, Lee. Thanks so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here with you today.
Well, I'm excited to learn what you're up to. Tell us a little bit about SBJ Consulting. How you serving folks?
So I started SBJ Consulting about 10 years ago, and we started in the HR space. I was previously a human resource director for Saks Fifth Avenue, a large retail store here in the United States. And so my background was human resources, and I sort of left the corporate world, like I said, about 10 years ago, went out on my own and consulted in the HR space, and then really got involved with leadership coaching, training, facilitation shortly after. And so that's the space that I'm operating in now, leadership coaching, executive coaching, and development.
Now, on your website, you use the phrase thought partner, and I love that phrase. Can you tell us a little bit about how that concept came about and what you mean by that?
Absolutely. So, great catch, by the way, but that is really how I brand myself. And that's really how I think about what we do when we're working with leaders, especially high level, highly successful leaders, because oftentimes there's a challenge for these individuals. They are moving miles per minute, and their brains are functioning at the highest of levels. And oftentimes where I think they find the most success is when they just sort of press a pause, and I call it sacred space. And I call our sessions sacred space because they're usually an hour long. Sometimes they go 90 minutes, and we process their thoughts. We process what they've got going on. And it's really a sacred time for them to focus on, maybe it's one project or one item that's causing some mental confusion or, yielding some lack of clarity. And so in our conversation, we really process the thoughts, and I partner with them to sort of clarify what it is that they are thinking and what it is they want in our time. So that's the thought partner piece.
Now, when you're working with these folks, is this the first time that they've hired an executive coach, or is this something that they've done throughout their career?
Oh, great question. Both, really. I have worked with folks that'll get on, in my Zoom room, because obviously we're all virtual. And they'll say, I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And then we'll take it from there. And within about 15 minutes, it's old hat. And then I'll work with people who have said, I've had coaches in the past, or I've had specific coaches that were geared toward up-leveling my public speaking skills or something like that. And now I'd like to work with you to up-level my executive presence or something like that. So both folks really, I find, take to the coaching process really well.
So now for the people who have never had a coach before, walk us through what that maybe first conversation looks like so they get a feel for what working with you might look like.
So if we were working in an organizational space, typically we would start with an assessment of sorts. So if it was an executive leader, we would probably start with a 360 assessment, which would allow us to sort of get the feedback about how they're performing from, say, their peers or their clients, their direct reports, their bosses, themselves. So we have a real clear picture of how they're showing up and how their leadership style is being perceived. So we would start with an assessment, and then we kind of debrief that assessment together. Here's where your strengths are. Here's what people are saying about your competencies. And then the flip of that coin, here's where we've got development opportunities, and what do you want to work on? What part of this is resonating with you, and what in the future, if we sort of extrapolated where you want to be in your career, what parts of this could hold you back? If we don't look at some of these competencies, if we don't look at up-leveling some of these areas, could they hold you back from the next seat you want to sit in? So in an organization, we would do something like that, a little more structured. If it was an individual who came to me and said, you know what, I really want to explore a passion that I have. I feel unfulfilled where I am in my life, in my career, whatever the case is, help me with that. And so it might be a little less of a formal process to start. We might start talking about things that bring you enjoyment, or areas that you have a pang of regret that you never explored, and why is it? And then we would sort of start there. So a couple different ways we could start, but certainly all about finding that next piece of ourselves that is going to bring us joy and fulfillment.
But as a coach, your methodology kind of flexes to the situation that they're in. You don't have a strict, like, okay, this is how we do this, and it's just, one size fits all. It sounds like you're customizing the experience to whatever the needs are of your client.
Most definitely. And I found really in the last, as we all have in the last year and a half, nothing is cookie cutter for any of us anymore. And as we begin to blend personal and professional lives, as we're working out of our homes with our families, and, there is no cookie cutter answer to anything. And so I feel like the flexibility that I have and the cues that I take from my clients really allow us to go down the path that's going to be the most successful for them. And even when I feel like, honestly, Lee, even when I feel like I enter in a session and I say, okay, here's our quote unquote agenda for the session, it always changes even in the middle of the session, because things are on my client's mind that they might not have even known was on their mind as we go through the conversation. So most definitely unique to each person, and sometimes even unique to the coaching engagement.
Now, do you have, I don't want to say a preference, but do you enjoy maybe working with the enterprise level executive that has a career path that they are trying to follow, as opposed to the entrepreneur who has more of a blank sheet of paper that they have kind of objectives and goals, but it's not maybe as straightforward of a path?
Yeah, I think probably the first. I work with leaders typically in organizations, whether they're the highest level of leader. I work with CEOs, VPs, directors, or, I work with emerging leaders or newly promoted leaders, or those leaders that are sort of tapped as your high potential leaders, sort of emerging into that leadership space. So the entrepreneur, although I am one, the entrepreneur is a little more challenging, and not doable for sure, but the direction we could go in is they're multi-passionate individuals. So we have lots of direction to go in. And typically I like to be able to work toward an outcome, and so for entrepreneurs, we've got so many things that are our outcomes that it makes coaching fun and exciting and big bang for the buck, but oftentimes unlimited as well.
Right. It's that curse and blessing of the blank sheet of paper, right?
Yes.
Where it could go anywhere, but it should go somewhere.
Exactly. Exactly. At the end of our engagement together, I am still a very results oriented person. That is my background. So at the end of the engagement, I want to be able to say, look at how look at all the progress we've made. Look at how far we've come. And so as an entrepreneur, I don't think you're ever done. As a leader, you're not either. But as an entrepreneur, there's always so much more.
So now, having that kind of results mentality and this ROI mentality, is that part of the, I guess, the comfort that your clients get from you is that there is going to be a result, that there's a measurable kind of situation. This isn't, I feel good.
Yeah.
This feels good.
Yeah, exactly. No. Most definitely, we work toward outcomes. We work toward results. Sometimes, to your point, sometimes they're a little less tangible because oftentimes, even when we do a 360, say, for example, and we hear, oh my gosh, this leader is a terrible communicator, for example, we don't often hear back from those who were participated in the survey saying his communication skills have exponentially, have increased exponentially. You don't ever really hear that, but you do hear it in the engagement that that leader has with their team. Now you do hear, people wanting to work and wanting to engage more with that leader. So I consider that to be a great result. Difficult to measure and quantify sometimes, if we're not, if one of our goals wasn't necessarily a revenue goal or something like that, or a sales goal or something like that. But challenging to quantify, but certainly results geared and results based.
Now, is there a story you could share maybe of obviously don't name names, but of a client that you helped get to a new level, that maybe they came to you, maybe they had plateaued, maybe they were frustrated, and you were able to work with them and help them get to a different level?
Absolutely. So I did work with one individual. Actually, this was one of my longest contracts. We've gone now several years together. And he came to me and said, I don't know this for sure, but I feel like there's competencies that are holding me back. Actually, he didn't use the word competencies. That's sort of a term that we use, right? But he said, I feel like there's something that's holding me back. I don't know what it is, but I know where I want to go and I know where I am. And I said, okay. So that's exactly where we started. We started with a 360 of his team. And he was correct. There were some things that were holding him back. And so as we debriefed that information, we found some incredible strengths that he had. And we wanted to maximize on those strengths and capitalize on those strengths. But we also wanted to really hone in on the two areas that were going to propel him forward. And in this instance, with this particular leader, one of those areas was an easy thing to develop. He was called out for his sort of quote unquote administrative skills, his inability to sort of direct work in a more functional way for his team. And so as we looked at that, we realized, oh my gosh, look at what we can do here, X, Y, Z. And so we put those into place, or he put those into place. He did the hard work, and the feedback that he got was exponential. And he went from, along with some other things, of course, he went from being a director in a very large organization to getting tapped to be a VP. So we had a goal. We had, driven results we wanted to accomplish, and he did. And we're still under engagement now. So I think that was a success.
Now, are you finding that enterprise level organizations are leveraging the power of coaching as just part of what, like you mentioned, high potential or executives get as part of their compensation package? Because this helps not only them as individuals, but it also helps the organization in terms of productivity. It probably helps keep people longer, I would imagine.
Oh, yes.
And it would also, it delivers results.
It absolutely delivers results. And, I would say, to answer that question, I think some forward-thinking, progressive organizations really see it as part of the package, really see it as part of the compensation package, the benefits they provide. and certainly the ability to up level and retain their leaders, and as a means of recruitment as well. I think that other organizations would love to do it, but maybe they don't see the immediate ROI. So you really have to be progressive in nature, and you really have to buy into it to say, this is what we want to do because the return is there. And the return is there. I was just reading a study, and I'll probably get it wrong, but it was something like 70% of those that engaged in coaching, whether it was provided by their organization or they found it externally themselves, had greater results with their teams and moved through their career trajectory at a faster pace. So, and that came from the Institute of Coaching. So I think the ROI is there, and I think companies are seeing it, but like everything else, you have to be able to prove it financially. And I think we're getting there. I really think we're getting there. I think the International Coaching Federation, the ICF, is doing a lot of work around promotion of that.
Yeah, and companies spend a lot of money on things that, to me, are harder to prove an ROI. Like, what's the ROI of a foosball table?
Right.
I mean,
nap pods.
right. So
I know.
if you're going to take a swing at some crazy idea, why don't you take a swing at something that at least, at the minimum, the worst case scenario is you're going to have a happy employee. They're going to feel like they're getting more out of it, and they're going to appreciate your organization more.
Absolutely. And you'll grow, like I said, you'll grow your people, but you'll also be able to recruit others of that high caliber level, because we want the people that are successful. We want their friends, right? We want to hang out with people that are successful, and then we want to bring their friends to come and hang out with us as well, because high potential people hang with high potential people.
Right. So now, what are some of those symptoms that a person who might need a coach, what are some clues, some breadcrumbs, where a person should say, you know what, maybe I should consider Stacy or another coach, or just a coach in general, in terms of helping me get through this either transition or this challenge or this plateau or some frustration? Are there breadcrumbs that lead a person that where coaching is the right answer for them?
There sure are. And I think one of the words that you used was a great one, and that's plateau. So in that particular example that I used with that leader, he had gone really far with the organization, and he had great success with the organization, and he was taking on more and more territories and real estate and responsibility for greater volume. But he had sort of self identified as having plateaued, and he wanted more, and he wasn't exactly sure how to go about getting it. And that's kind of where that thought partner piece comes back in as well. When we think about, I think it was, I don't know, maybe it was Einstein, or I think he said, the thinking that got you here won't get you there. And so sometimes I think we get far enough on our own, but we know we want to go further. We just don't know how. So I think those folks are great candidates for coaching. I also think people that have gotten feedback, which I don't love that word, but people that have gotten feedback in the past that they might have ignored because it hadn't hindered them. They were still able to move on and move up and get the next role, but lingering, they've gotten some feedback in the past, and now they're realizing they might need some help getting to that next level. Those folks are great candidates for coaching. And I think people that want more, that want to know what else they could do and what else they could have, that are just passionate about creating a fuller life for themselves, are great candidates for coaching. And so,
now, is there any advice you would have for a person that maybe comes from an enterprise level organization and is going out as a coach now, maybe for the first time? Is there anything that you would tell that person in order to maybe smooth their path to a coaching career?
I think that you have to find the group that you resonate with, because if you market to everyone, you market to no one. And that's a hard road to go. So I think you need to find the group that you fit in with. There's another saying, right? Get in where you fit in. So the question you asked me earlier, do I like to work with entrepreneurs, or do I like to work with, folks in an organization? And I said, well, I really think it's folks in an organization. So you have to kind of figure out who your people are. And I think that will help on your road to transitioning into that coaching space.
Now, any advice from to help maybe alleviate some of the imposter syndrome? Like, who am I to be giving advice to these leaders? Mm-hmm. I never achieved that level in my career, and now here I am advising them.
Yeah, that's a great question, because sometimes I have that also. I think we all suffer from imposter syndrome, and I know sometimes I suffer from that as well. And I think that remembering that we all have different experiences, and remembering that it's really a conversation. I'm not here in a consultant capacity. Now, my logo is Thought Partner Coach Consultant, and I do consult with some organizations on a human resource level, because that was my primary background for years and years. So if someone wants to consult with me on a policy or, employment labor practice or something like that, I can do that. But in a coaching engagement, we are thought partners. So it's about the questions that you ask. It's about listening to what the coachee or your partner is saying to you. There's so much rich conversation that you can have with someone that will allow them to come up with the answers themselves. So I don't have to have been, a CEO of a manufacturing plant to be able to help that individual think through the challenge they're facing in a certain situation. I don't have to have had that experience to hear them and to reflectively inquire about what they want to do next in order to get them forward.
If there's someone out there that wants to learn more about your practice and have more substantive conversation with you, is there a website?
Absolutely. You can find me at sbjconsultinginc.com.
Well, Stacy, thank you so much for sharing your story today. You're doing such important work, and we appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Lee. I've had a pleasure talking with you today. Thank you very much.
All right, this is Lee Cantor. We will see you all next time on Coach the Coach Radio.